Hi everyone! In this episode I am going to continue repairing a few active Tektronix probes I acquired recently. In my previous video I showed how I made this probe cap replacement prototype, but it has a socket that is not compatible with Tektronix attachments. And I also made this probe cover replacement, but it turns out it is not easy to put on. For that I would need to desolder the cable either from this side or from this side, and both are undesirable. Not easy and with substantial risk of damaging something. And many viewers suggested designing this cover split into two halves and gluing them together around the cable. So let's see what we can do. Let's take a look at the probe cap first. For my prototype I used a socket like this, but unfortunately this Tektronix tip does not fit into this socket, and this Tektronix attachment also doesn't fit. So I found a better socket on DigiKey and I bought a few pieces, and here is one of them. They are slightly smaller outside, about 1.5 millimeters, as opposed to about 1.7. But this Tektronix tip fits just fine. It does not go all the way in, but just a tiny bit, so it shouldn't be a problem, I believe. And this square pin fits just fine as well. And I hope you can see a narrow part here between the socket and this hollow end. This must be for crimping or soldering a wire. And the socket is about 9.7 millimeters long, which I think is slightly longer than the original, but shouldn't be a problem. So I'm thinking about cutting this tail off right at the end of the socket, hopefully preserving this outer gold-plated ring on the back of the socket, which is needed because, as I showed in my previous video, there is a conductive rubber or foam piece between this back of the socket and the probe electronics, providing soft contact between them. And the original piece is about 1 millimeter in diameter, and in my prototype I used a much larger piece of some RF gasket I happened to have. It was about 4 millimeters. So I found this conductive RF gasket on DigiKey for just a few dollars a foot, and it is about 1 millimeter in diameter. So I believe using these parts I should be able to build something very close to the original thing. So I changed this part slightly. This pocket was rectangular before to match the RF gasket I happened to have. Now it is circular and slightly offset, just like in the original part I showed in my previous video. I'm not entirely sure about this design. Printed parts usually need some cleanup, and this might be difficult to clean up because the holes are not all the way through and the part is very small. Let's see how this goes. Here is a printed part after some cleanup. It doesn't look too bad. And I have already cut off the tail of this socket right here and pushed it all the way in. And we can see when I align them on the back, this thing is slightly longer than the original. And if we put in this Tektronix tip, we can see that this tip does not go all the way in because it has slightly larger diameter here and it does not fit into the socket, which makes it stick out slightly and makes the whole thing slightly longer still. Not perfect, but what can we do? This is the best socket I could find. Here we can see the back end of this socket. Let's put in this conductive gasket, like so. And now we should be able to test this with a multimeter. Let's see if I can touch one probe to the tip and hold it like so, and poke this gasket with the other probe. There you go. This should work. Here is the socket on DigiKey, made by Amphenol. This is the part number, and the price is $157 a piece for a small quantity, below 10. And here is the conductive gasket, made by Parker Chimerics. This is the part number, and the price is $376 a foot, if you don't need 10 feet. So I redesigned the probe cover. Now it is split into top and bottom. I will hide the top. So I designed this thing with a lip. I believe it will help to hide the glue. Let's see how this works. Here is the result, and it looks quite good. Unlike my previous design, I had a problem here with surface quality. I guess this design just does not match what my printer can do. It was printed like this, and these pieces are printed flat, of course, and there is no problem printing them at all. Now let's see if I can glue them together around the cable. So I glued one set together without any cable involved, and this looks fine to me. I'm using this flexible adhesive. It is industrial strength. That's what we want, don't we? And here I glued another set around the cable. I put a small piece of this Kapton tape in this area around the cable. I thought the glue might spill over slightly and glue this cover to the cable, which we don't want, and I hope this tape will prevent that. So let's wait for this to cure, and we will have a look at the result. Here is the result. Not bad, I think, especially compared to the original disintegrating rubber. This probe still has the original cap, so here I have another one with both new cap and new cover. And I even filed down this bump on the Tektronix tip so it can go almost all the way into the socket. Let's put them side by side. Not bad at all, I believe. Now let's test this repaired probe. Of course it works fine. Thanks for watching. Bye.